You know how fast you were going?
What? How fast you were going?
I don't know. 10?
8.
Be advised, this is an explicit podcast. If you're easily offended, get your panties twisted into a knot. Leave now. Run to your safe space. Get your little cloth for your tears. All the opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and his guest and do not reflect the opinions of any local or government agency. Welcome to MOTORCOP Chronicles podcast. Your host is always Iceman. We got a guest today. We'll be introducing him in a minute. We're going to get this housekeeping out the way. Of course, if we want a great cigar, if you want a great cigar, go to mypatriotcigar.com. Order your cigars. Use MOTORCOP 15. Get 15% off of your order. And it's a small business guy. Be supporting somebody like that and not somebody overseas. If you want any MOTORCOP merch, T-shirts, stickers, all kind of other stuff, you can go to either MotorCopChronicles.com. Links are all at the bottom. Go to the merch page, or you can go straight to Etsy store, MOTORCOP Chronicles Podcast Etsy store. Get your merch there. If you want more of me, extra episodes, videos, pictures, got over like 100 something things on it. You can go to the Patreon, join the Patreon. 3 different tiers. If you can't afford it, because I know times are tight, I understand. We'll keep putting the free stuff out also. Speaking of our Patreons, we got shout outs to our full crew members. We got Miss Kelly Meyer. We got Jared Nitrous, MOTORCOP for Life. We got Mr. William Gibo. We got Dan Carlson with Burley Boards. Y'all go check him out. Makes fantastic product. He can even mail you a handmade cutting board. You can use it for cutting your food, beating your kids, spanking your wife, or home self-defense. We got T-Bird. We got our favorite truck driver, Mr. Hoppy Hopperson. We got Blake Walker. We got Aaron from I Had to Say It podcast. We got Mr. Roy Spalding. That's Roy with the S, not Roy with the P. And we have our favorite Australian girl, JoJo, and Natasha A. from the state of Washington. Appreciate every single one of y'all helping me pay the bills. So I'm going to let him say his last name because I'll probably mispronounce it. But his first name's John. He is a retired NYPD detective. He's got a very long resume, people. He's been... I had it wrote down right here, and now I don't have it. He's the Director of Security of Rand Paul 2016, Director of Security for Ron Paul in 2012 for their presidential campaigns. Numerous stuff with the detectives. He's a police expert in misconduct, excessive force, police shootings, homicide, rape, sexual assault, and false allegations, child abuse, and domestic violence. So, without further ado, let's get him in here. Mr. John, I'm going to let you say your last name because I'm horrible with
That's okay. No, sir. It's Baeza, John Baeza.
See, I would have said BZ or some BZ or something like
okay.
that.
I've heard worse.
I appreciate you coming and talking to us today.
Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Looks like you've had a very long and career with a lot of interesting stuff you've done.
Yeah, I feel it's been very interesting. Yeah. It was a long career and very interesting, and some of it for the government and some of it private. So it's been very, very full.
Well, I see. You got to do some presidential campaign stuff. Closest I've ever gotten to do on that stuff is, I've done some presidential escorts. I can say some were more interesting than others.
That's important stuff too. I mean, I just happen to be fortunate enough to be involved in as a director of security for 2 presidential campaigns where the candidates were not going to take Secret Service, because they wouldn't take government money for their security. So for 15 months, I worked on the first one with Ron Paul in 2012, and then with Rand Paul, it was probably about 8 months or so until he dropped out. But I got to see things I'd never thought I'd see, and sit in those debates on TV that I used to watch. And I was at 27 debates, and just stuff I had to pinch myself sometimes to think that, hey, I'm really here.
I can imagine. I'm pretty sure it's pretty stressful doing that kind of stuff too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I took my job seriously. Of course, it was stressful, but people ask me, what was the most dangerous thing, and it was all off-duty stuff like possible car accidents and stuff like that, but nothing serious at all. Just funny stories, and I'm glad for that.
Oh yes. I told people, I've had to escort, I've escorted Biden when he was a vice president. We had Hillary Clinton. I did Trump before he was president. And I've told people, people's like, oh, I'm like, I said, Secret Service come out and they bring the bomb dogs out and stuff and sniff us and stuff like that. And, they have snipers out in the area where we're at. Don't think they don't check the cops out too, Don't look at the limousine when you're going past it, or don't slow down and stuff like that. And people, they don't understand them. It's serious business when they're moving, especially when it's the president moving around and stuff like that.
No, it is definitely, and I had the ability to work with not only the Secret Service, but the Texas Rangers, New Jersey State Troopers. There were quite a few governors in that race in 2012, and 2016 there might have been some others, but yeah, I had a great time. Very, very busy. You don't have time to really enjoy where you're at. And, as a patrolman, I used to do, I think it was President Bush, I guess, was president. You stand there and they tell you, look up at the buildings, and you're in uniform and you do what they tell you, You always wonder what goes on, closer to the president or the candidate, And I was fortunate enough to kind of have the ability to see that and to meet some really cool people and interesting people that were close to some of the presidents, so it was cool.
Yeah. I've never been in New York. I probably won't. The way things are, I probably never will go to New York.
I'm living in Florida now.
Oh, you made the big move to Florida.
Just after I retired, so probably back in 2002, I came down here. And there's plenty of retired cops now. I think there's more retired cops in our NYPD association down there than there are sheriffs in the sheriff's office,
Well, is it because
there's a lot of them down here? They don't tax your pension in Florida, so that's a lot of cops come down here.
Well, that and the cost of living's probably cheaper. So with y'all may compared to living in New York, y'all salary probably wasn't nothing. But your salary that you made in New York, where I'm in Louisiana, I'd be like rich or something if I get paid what y'all got paid in New York with the cost of living that's in Louisiana.
Yeah. And when I was in New York, I moved from Staten Island. I moved out of the city. You're allowed to live in the 5 boroughs, and then there's like 5 counties outside of the city that you can live in New York, not in New Jersey, but in New York. So I moved up about 60 miles north of the city. And that's where I raised my family, my wife, my first house, and so forth. And I travel about an hour or so, 60 miles in, depending on traffic, right? And then 60 miles back every day because I couldn't afford to live in the city. No.
Yeah, I have watched some stuff on TV and stuff on YouTube. That's like they were showing like rentals on apartments and stuff, and it was like, it's like a little studio apartment that's like 400 square feet, maybe. It was like $2,000-$3,000 or more of that, or more a month. And it's like, it's not big enough for one person to live in, unless a family. I'm like, that's just insane.
It is. It's insane. I don't know how they expect police officers to live on the salary they make. So, I mean, it was comfortable to, you deal with the commute, you travel. A lot of guys I know travel to Long Island. They did a much longer commute, a lot of traffic out there, but you want to raise your family in a good area, and plus you want your money to go much further. You're able to buy a house, have a little yard, So, yeah, I mean, it's important. It was important for me. My dad was a lieutenant with the fire department, and he had moved out of the city, and when I was a kid, and we lived about the same towns, about 60 miles north of the city, and he would travel back and forth as a fireman.
Right. And how'd that go? You didn't follow in Daddy's footsteps. You became law enforcement, and Dad was a fireman.
Yeah, my dad was a lieutenant in New York City Fire Department. My uncle, who lived next door, very close to him, he was a New York City cop and then became a fireman. He retired as a battalion chief. And then both my grandfathers were New York City police officers. One was a police officer and one was a lieutenant. And so I grew up, my whole family was cops and firemen. And I just happened to I was never pressured at all to become a cop or anything. I just happened to read books at a library. We didn't have Amazon back then. and I read these books, Batman and Robin books about Serpico, stuff like that, and then I said, I got a little family history. So I became a cop, a New York City cop, because of family history, not because of, we call it a shield, but, the badge and the gun had nothing to do with it. It was all family history. And I never really had I never found the desire to be a fireman. I wanted to be a cop. I don't know why.
Well, you definitely have a family full of public service there.
Yeah, I do. And in the neighborhood I lived, the 5 houses. This is 60 miles north of the city. When I was a kid, the 5 houses surrounding me were all cops and firemen. Next door to me, right in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're all firemen and cops. So that's kind of how I grew up and how I was raised. And yeah.
Well, I always find it very interesting, like with the big city cops and stuff like New York. What's with it? I could be totally wrong with 36,000
about that, yeah.
Strong, something like that. So you could work your whole career in the department, and you're never going to know everybody that works there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you in one precinct alone, you might have 300-400 officers manning one precinct. So, I mean, you got to know them by sight, but even in the precinct I worked, you might not know everybody. And then when you go to a bigger section like Narcotics, where I worked as an undercover, there's even more there, and I didn't know everybody, and to this day I still don't.
See, I think I've worked for 2 different sheriff's offices, and both of them, my previous one, it's getting bigger. Where when I left, it was getting where I was in motors, but I didn't quite know everybody because I was in this division, and then you got days and nights. And all that. The one I'm with now, though, it's smaller, but I guarantee you, we know everybody knows. Might not be hanging out with each other's house, but everybody knows who each other is. At least in the whole department, and in I want to say it, the surrounding departments, cities, municipalities, and different. Y'all have counties, but different parishes. Like next door, we know several jurisdictions. Away. Everybody kind of pretty much don't know everybody, but the majority of them.
Yeah, I had worked 3 years down here in Florida after I retired for a sheriff's office here, and I resigned honorably to start my private work. But I got a taste for that, for working with a smaller agency, and it was good to know, kind of everybody and have a feeling that you kind of you could kind of know people and talk to them and say hello and so forth. Where in New York, it was unless you work with them directly, the guy could work out in Queens and you don't know him,
So, tell us some funny or strange incidents that you got from all your years in law enforcement. Because in New York, I can just imagine it's got to be. I don't imagine there's a lot of downtime.
A lot of what? Downtime?
Yeah, I mean, I would think y'all would, all the guys be pretty much busy.
Well, yeah, and it depends on where you work. You know, I worked in the ghetto precinct. I worked in the 3-2 precinct, which is in central Harlem, and we were very, very busy during the 90s. I mean, you're talking about a precinct that covered less than 1 square mile and probably had 80, 90 homicides per year. And every time we come into work, they were what we call jobs. They were holding jobs, calls. It might be holding 30. You know, you're behind 30 calls. And every call is, you know, man with a gun, man selling drugs, robbery, rapes, burglary. I mean, it's just, and you're in a place that it's different now, but back then it looked like Beirut or, you know, a burned out place. It was just, it's like you were working in a third world country, not necessarily the people, but the appearance of
The environment general, right? So they would hold calls that long or they would so backed up you just took them in line.
Yep. Sometimes you weren't really technically supposed to, but sometimes you take 2 or 3 and say, okay, give me, you know, central, we call it central, give me the next 3, and they'd give you 3 and you'd try to catch up. And sometimes you did, and depends. Sometimes you didn't. If it's a hot summer, a long hot summer, you're going to be busy. And so you're not sitting around and it was good. I mean, to me, that was good for me. You know, some people like to, maybe you were out in Queens or Staten Island and you're in a quiet place or whatever, and that's fine. You know, there's different strokes for different folks, I guess.
Well, I found, you know, they say busy days for cops are bad days for everybody else, but I find my busier days, like I say, I work a lot of traffic investigation and stuff. The more, you know, like the other day when I had quite a few crashes and stuff, my day went by like that. I'd much rather that than me like sitting, you know, driving around or doing whatever. It's like, it's just like, it drags. You know,
that's exactly right. And I don't know if I mentioned it to the audience yet, but I had spent 2.5 years as a correctional officer at Sing Sing Correctional Facility before I became a cop, because you had to be 20 to be a cop. So as soon as I graduated high school, you could be 18 and be a correctional officer, and the pension counts up front. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I did it. But even there, the shift that we had, you know, 7 to 3, whatever, it went by, you know, a snap of a finger, blink of an eye, you're done, because it's so busy. You're constantly moving. And I wore out like 2 pairs of shoes while I was working there. So it got me ready. But yeah, I enjoyed working and being busy. That's me.
That's crazy. You know, I mean, I started in corrections before I even thought about being a street cop. Because I didn't go to college for that at all. And I got into corrections, and this buddy there was like, "Oh man, you know, started doing reserve work, you know, with this police department." Well, I found out, you know, they had reserves where I lived at, and that's how I started doing, you know, working for free. And decided I liked doing that, and ended up getting hired on full time because I was working for the state corrections for the state, and if I'd have stayed there, I'd have been retired. But I told people, it's like, well, I was like, I got to the point where there was a point, and I was this was in the early 90s and stuff too, and it's like, I was like, they had some convicts I trusted more than the free man, because some of the free men would try to stick a knife in your back before some of the convicts would. So it was time for me to get out of there anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of felt after 2.5 years it was a good move to go over. I have much respect for correction officers and the good ones and what they do, but you know, I'm just glad I went to the police department and do what that was my desire the whole time.
Oh yeah. So which part did you like the most? Narcotics or homicide?
You know, the most fun that I had in the police department was when I was in narcotics. I went in as an undercover, and at the time, not just plain clothes, like an undercover, they take your name out of the system, that kind of thing, and they give you a different driver's license, all that stuff. And it was a challenge. I wanted to see if I could do it. I didn't know. I said, I don't know. But anyway, I did it. And when I was there, you had the freedom because for 3 years I did it and I didn't have to wear a uniform. In fact, even when the 1993 World Trade Center bombing happened, we all wanted to go, and undercovers were not allowed to show their face, put a uniform on, nothing. So, I mean, they took that very seriously, and I was glad they did. But that was the most fun I had, even though it was, it's dangerous work. We all know that. But I had a lot of fun there, and there was just a lot of freedom because I was a patrol cop. I'm working very busy, of course, and you're in uniform, right? And now all of a sudden I'm growing my hair long, right? And some people can't believe that, but I did. And I was, dressed like I want to dress, and I just had a great time. And I did make a lot of buys and stuff like that, yeah. But I had a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. I may not, I don't want to get political, but I just say I'm not a big fan of the drug war after this. But during that time, for those 3 years, boy, I have fun.
That was out during the crack time, right?
What's that?
That was during when crack was real popular back in those days.
Yeah, crack and cocaine. I made the majority of my buys. I never really got out of the precinct I was in because the headquarters for Manhattan North Narcotics, which is where I went, was in the 3-2 precinct, which is where I did patrol. It was out of the armory there. So anyway, we worked out of there, and I worked a lot of the buys I made were up in Washington Heights, which was at the time, I don't know if it still is, was one of the cocaine capitals, where they would, the Dominican drug trafficking organization would sell a lot of, cocaine. They get it from Colombians in Queens, and they'd sell it there. And, it was just, yeah. I thought it was going to be difficult, when I first started. I said, oh, my gosh, am I the wrong ethnicity to buy drugs? Am I the wrong whatever? And that as long as you have the green and you have the money, it didn't matter. You have a little backstory, you make something up,
Yeah.
It worked out. Yeah.
You were married at the time?
Yes, I was.
Wife wasn't like super worried about you being undercover like that?
Yeah, I think she was. I mean, she was good like that, but back then, there was no cell phone, no nothing.
Yeah,
so,
that is true.
it was just, it was a different world, but yeah, she was worried, but she was good. She was very dedicated, and, we're divorced. I still love her. She's a great woman. But, I had the most fun I had was there working, because the funniest things happened when I was working as an undercover. Just some stuff that you just cannot make up, Well,
tell us about it.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the funniest stories, and I don't know, maybe the audience won't find it so funny. I do, but I just maybe a little explanation of making some street buys here. Sometimes you walk up to somebody and say, give me two vials of crack, whatever. You say two, what they're selling, and you give them whatever, $10, you get 2 vials of crack. It's kind of simple. I'm not saying it's not dangerous. It's simple though. So sometimes you drive in your car. So the NYPD, which had like a $2 billion budget, wasn't like the feds. It was like pulling teeth to get money. They wouldn't provide you with an undercover car. So I had to use my own junker.
Wow.
But what I would do is I'd peel off the New York inspection tags, and I would take off my New York plates, and a friend of mine that I worked with as an undercover, he'd give me New Jersey tags to put on. I think Jersey only had I don't know if they had a front and a back, I forget. But anyway, every time I went out, I put these Jersey tags on and drive up in my car. And sometimes I didn't have to get out of my car to make a buy, because they just come right at you at the street. There might be 5 people come on you, 10 people, 20, and try to, you could buy, I call it smaller amounts, but smaller amounts of drugs that way. And come up, you make a buy. So what we would do is, and just to set the stage here quick, what we would do is we drive up by I drive my car up. Sometimes I have another undercover in it just because that's how they get around and drive with me. But just say I got them in the car and I drive up, make a buy. I get a good look at the guy that's selling to me. The buy money's pre-recorded and stuff. And then I would drive off and we had a radio and hold it down low. You've seen all these movies where they hold the radio up by the head, we put the radio down by the seat, and you'd say, this is the description of the guy, male Hispanic, he's got a gold tooth, whatever the case may be, give him a good description. And then the field team, who would be about 2 blocks away, would then, at that point, as soon as you're out of the way, they would move in and freeze the whole block up, and then they would identify by your description of the guy, and then they would ask you to come by to do a drive-by. So they might have in the street, now back then it was very busy, so you might have, 50, 100 people in the street, and they'd have them all like try to stare up at the sky, and you drive by slowly in your vehicle, and you got to remember there's a lot of cars, a lot of traffic, so it wasn't like you were the only vehicle. It wasn't like they could see that, oh, that guy's an undercover. They don't know. So as I pulled by, I would look and say, okay, you got him right there. You got the guy, that's him, blah, 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 whatever. And that confirmed it, and there we go. So that's how we would do those buys. So one day I'm working with an undercover. His name was Mickey. And we call each other uncles for undercover. Uncle was the nickname. UC, Uncle, right? In New York, anyway. So Uncle Mickey, and my name's John Baeza. People call me Uncle JB. So Uncle Mickey was with me, right? And he's sitting next to me. He looks like, he had a beard like yours, but not dark. It was. He had like red hair, big beard. Looked like a biker dude, I guess, And I love Mickey. I still do. But anyway, all of a sudden I'm driving to do I make the buy. I'm driving to do the ID with him. And I look over to do the ID, and I just happen to see movement out of my right side on him. He's in the passenger. And I look over, and he's got a brown paper bag over his head, okay, with the eye holes punched out in the mouth. So I look at him now, and I go, I don't want to say what I just.
You can say it. I've been like, what the fuck are you doing?
He goes, I don't want to get burned. I don't want them to know who I am. I go, first of all, they're not going to tell you. I said, but don't you think they're going to look at me now? Because I got a guy with a paper bag over his head in my passenger seat, and I don't have a bag over my head. You didn't provide me with a bag, And so so he didn't really understand that, So we pull off, and the next thing you know, the story, I have to tell the story. I love the guy. He wasn't bad mouth him. It was in good humor, but I said, don't you ever do that again. I said, you didn't even think to provide me with a bag for my head.
Yeah.
I said, first of all, you're not going to get burned. People out here, there's too much traffic. People don't know who you are. You could buy 5 times in a row and do this, and nobody would know who you were. That's how busy it was. But he was newer than me, so I understood. But the bag, and he had this pre-planned because the eye holes already punched out like a mouth. And I'm like, didn't you think that would cause them to focus their attention on me? Because I got a guy with a bag on his head in my car. And so the unknown, like the unknown comic.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking the whole time. The unknown comic guy. I don't know. He used to
unknown undercover.
Yeah, the unknown comic used to be on a Gong show. We just start showing our age here. But I'd have just looked at him and like, what the hell? It's like, yeah, so you got a bag. You could have got me a bag too.
What's that now?
It's like, yeah, he got a bag and didn't think about getting you a bag.
Yeah, so he's got this he's done some other, he did some other stuff later too, not with me, but stuff I learned about, which was kind of crazy. But he was a good undercover, this guy. He could make buys. He was very brave. He was very good, but sometimes he just did some things that were maniacal, and I was just like, I mean, they were just bizarre. One time, I wasn't with him, but one time he was with another undercover, and they were getting gas in a vehicle at one of the precincts. And when they were getting gas, one of his undercover partner coaxed him to light up a fake marijuana cigarette he had. It was like a cigarette with tea leaves or something in it. And I don't know why he even carried that, because you're supposed to be buying drugs. But anyway, whatever. So he is now outside a precinct, okay, by the gas pumps, and he lights up this thing. And so some deputy inspector, like a captain, and that's above a captain, that you rank above, he walks by and he sees this guy. He thinks he's smoking a joint right in front of the precinct. He goes in, and then cops come out, and there's a whole thing. We hear about this later. And it turns out that, back in those days, it was squashed. Of course, it was no marijuana, but the guy just, he didn't think. But it was some funny stuff that went on. It was just, like I said, it was good to have that relief, because it is a dangerous thing. It is stressful, of course, but thinking about those things and thinking about some of the crazy stuff that people would do is just, to this day, it could bring tears to my eyes. It told the right way. Maybe I didn't tell it the right way today, but sometimes I tell it the right way, and the laughter just comes.
It was good.
To my eyes.
I could just imagine looking over there, and it's like seeing somebody with a bag on their head and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How often? We don't have like super tall buildings around here like y'all have over there. How often you like had to like climb up a shit ton of stairs because the elevator was out or something like that? That had to suck balls.
Anything less than 5 stories was definitely climbing upstairs. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I mean,
my hearing is, I've lost my hearing over the years.
No, it's just I'm like, you see some of these high rises or just tall buildings that just didn't have, or the elevators would be out or something like that.
Yeah, if you work in it depends on where you work. Like when I worked in Central Harlem on patrol, very rarely, unless it was a housing project, would you have an elevator. And even then, the elevators either they wouldn't work or they smell like a bathroom. It'd be horrible. But most of the buildings did not have elevators. So, and it seemed that every call you went on was on the top floor. It seemed like that. It wasn't the case, but it always seemed like that, right? Always the 5th floor, no elevator, and they'll walk up brownstones or tenement buildings, and yeah. So we did a lot of stair climbing. And like I said, unless you're in the projects, and back then we had housing police was a separate police department. They merged into the NYPD, but they had their own police department, and we would work with them, but they had their own work cut out for them in the housing projects and transit as well. Transit police we had. Again, they eventually merged with the NYPD, but they were their own department. I think they had about 5,000 police officers in transit.
Wow. See, like I said, I grew up in the country and stuff like that. And, I still pretty much, it's building up, but I mean, I'm 53 years old, and last year was the first time I'd ever been on public transportation in my entire life. And that was because I happened to I went to Police Week in D.C. and rode the Metro, which is like a subway or train thing to me. You have anything underground in Louisiana, it's called a swimming pool because it's got water in it since we're below sea level. Well, you in Florida, you ought to know that by now. But so we don't have anything underground like that. And so I get over there and I'm like, this is like a Disney ride for me and my friends that had never been doing anything like that. And I can just see how it's just totally different experiences when having to, with the subway system and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was different. One of the things I didn't mention too is when my father retired from the fire department, he moved to a little town in Pennsylvania, had 150 people, and that's where I went to middle school and high school. It was on the border of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, right on the Delaware River. And I grew up in a small town. I'm not saying I was a country boy necessarily like you, but I grew up in a small town, and it was an adjustment for me even though all my family is a fireman and policeman, and I traveled to the city, and that's where my baseball teams and football teams were, it was an adjustment for me to go to New York City, to go to Sing Sing, first of all, and then to go to New York City and be a cop was an adjustment for me from being in a town of 150 people and a high school where, I probably graduated with maybe, I don't know, less than 100 students in my graduating class,
Everybody knew each other.
Yeah. My dad, he passed on in 2018, but he was my Superman, and he never pressured me, and he always took care of myself and my brother, and I got to thank him for that, because I had not much of a talk about my past, but I had a good childhood because he cared and my mom cared so much. My mom is an RN, registered nurse, and they were really good. Of course, everybody, a lot of people love their parents. I love my parents, but they were really good, and they took care of me. But I saw it as a challenge. I don't know about you, how you felt about it when you get into this stuff, but I saw it as a challenge. Can I face it? Can I do this? And I guess I did. I'm not saying I did it. I'm the best. I work with some guys who are the best. These guys were heroes.
You made it out alive.
I did. Now I'm here.
I mean, that's the main thing there, especially nowadays. Be glad you're not in it. I'm waiting to get out, because from when you started, like I started in the 90s in police work, and I tell some of these rookies, and everybody's like, oh, you're always saying back in the day. Let me tell you what. Well, back in the day, before there was cell phones and computers and all this stuff like that, hell, when I first started, we didn't even have we didn't even have portable radios. Like I said, you got on a call and you had to handle business, because you couldn't call for help. And now I'm like, back in the day, yeah, well, like I said, police work's totally different now, because for one thing, stuff got bad, you didn't worry about it, because there wasn't nobody sitting there with a camera filming you and stuff like that. And it's just like, I told somebody, I said, bad guys back then knew they were bad guys. And, I had a guy one time, they asked him and said, well, you want to file a complaint against him? Because I had bruised quite a few of his ribs. I talked about this last interview, and the guy's like, no, I started it, he finished it. You ain't going to have a bad guy say that nowadays. So, just say, go on.
Times have changed. The job has changed. I wouldn't encourage, I never pressured any of my children, but I wouldn't encourage any of them to ever be a police officer, especially in New York City. But I probably would discourage them nowadays if they said, but none of them want to be a cop. So I'm not, that's good with me.
I'm the only one in my family. None of my kids. My dad worked in chemical plants and stuff. I don't know. I just, how I ended up in it's just something I liked. And the closest I have now is I have a stepson and I have a future son-in-law. They're both firemen. And I'll tell people no. It's like, I'm like, no. If you want to do public service, go be a fireman. I said, people are like firemen. They're happy when they see firemen. They're usually not happy when they see law enforcement show up.
That's exactly right. Sometimes I thought about it. I said, maybe I should have been a fireman, but it wasn't in me to be a fireman. But if somebody asked me, I certainly would say that. I think the last kind of close relative I have is a little cousin of mine. He's a captain in the New York City Fire Department. He's on Staten Island, and I think that's kind of the last of the clan,
Yeah.
And I believe that will be the last, probably, to go through the civil service in New York,
Well, unfortunately, like I said, New York is, especially if you watch the news and stuff. I mean, and, a lot of my listeners, they know where I stand at, because I'm like, New York's a shithole, Chicago's a shithole, San Francisco. Hell, I tell them Baton Rouge is a shithole in Louisiana, New Orleans. I don't see why anybody want to work in those areas, or even it's like, oh, we're so many understaffed. I think, oh, you couldn't pay me $1 million a year to go work in any of these places, because first of all, you can do your job 100% right, but, because of the narrative going on or whatever, you're going to end up in jail or being, on TV and stuff like that. It's not worth it.
No, it's not. You're correct. I mean, it's hard to say because it's a career that you still are proud of, I know, and you're still involved in. And I'm proud of the police department I was a part of. Maybe not the institution as it stands today, but the history of it, I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I work with I was very fortunate. I worked with great cops that just made me better. I consider myself a mediocre cop, and I do, but I work with guys that were, genuine heroes, and it really upped my game, and it enabled me to fulfill my dream of becoming a cop and to face the challenges. As you know, no matter where you go, like you were talking about all the big cities, I guess no matter where you go, even if it's a small town, you may have that one chance where you're tested. Now, if you're in a place like Baton Rouge or New Orleans or L.A., Detroit, Baltimore, New York, all Chicago, you're going to be tested a lot more on a daily basis. Maybe not just on an hourly basis. You might be tested. Your courage, your bravery, and everybody's scared, and that's okay. It's just that you can't let fear rule your life completely, or your time on the job completely. You have to be. It's okay to have that and keep you on edge, I think. But so, like, I was always, I guess, I don't know how to put it. I was always scared, always, and that was good. That part of it was good, but not fearful to the point where I'm gonna run away or not do my job or whatever. And to this day, those were tests that I wanted to see if I could, challenges that I see if I could face.
Oh yeah. Well, I tell you, if I told somebody if you look at me and say, "Oh, I'm not scared," none of okay, well, I don't want to work with you because it's like, if you say you're not scared, period, either you're lying or something's wrong with you. Because I've been in some situations, I was scared to death, but you learn it's how you control that fear. What do you let it do to you? You don't run, you control it. But if you go in there, Mr. I'm Billy Badass, 10 foot tall and bulletproof, you're usually one to get yourself hurt or get somebody else hurt.
Yeah, that's right. Even those guys, I call the heroes, the guys I work with, those guys would easily and readily admit that they had fear, they were scared, but they faced it, and you looked at them and you learned from them, and also, it's what you have, your intestinal fortitude, I guess, and either you run away or you face it, you do your job, and I think that's really the challenges that I'm most proud of. I guess any cop worth his salt will be proud of, Oh, yeah.
So what are you up to now? You got any side hustle you're doing? Or are you just enjoying the beach?
I think I'm at the tail end of I've been doing expert witness work. It's been sporadic, it hasn't been great. I've done work on shootings. My goal is just to find the truth out about what happens. Sometimes I get cases of police brutality, and sometimes those cases I find that the police officer did the right thing, and there's been cases where I've had attorneys, yell at me, I'm not paying you to solve the case, and I'm like, I'm not trying to solve, I'm just telling you what the truth is. This is, the guy had his arm up, and this is how I know, forensic shooting reconstruction, whatever, the forensic evidence. And, there have been times myself and my business partner, who's a retired detective from New York, he lives up there now with his wife, but luckily we could do our work with computers now. But anyway, we've given money. hard-earned money we made, we've given it back to the attorneys on those cases, and we just said, listen, don't contact us again. We're not going to testify like you want us to testify. They want us to testify in that particular case.
They want you to testify a certain way, and you're like, no, I'm just going to tell the truth on how I see it.
That's it.
Yeah.
I got to tell.
I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. If I'm going to do it, I mean, look, when I was a cop, being an expert is completely different than when you're a cop. When you're a cop, I have no interest in like the internal affairs aspect. I never even thought about that. I had no interest in it. But when you're an expert, you got to look at stuff, and you got to know you're going to testify in court. When you testify to the case, it could be that you're testifying and it's not really good for a police officer, or it could be that you testify or look at a case and you tell the attorney, listen, this is the cop is right. The forensics tell me, and the truth is that the cop is right in this case. And we've seen that in a couple of cases, and like I said, the blowback we felt is terrible, because there are a lot of experts out there who will just, because of money, they'll testify for whatever way you want. Mm-hmm. And I just won't do it. I mean, I'm poor. I'm not a rich retiree or anything. I didn't have the pensions like they have now, but you know what? I can't live with myself if I, do the wrong thing. My father brought me up better than that.
Oh yeah. Well, I tell anybody anything. Like I was talking to some other people on other podcasts. This one guy, he's like, if I had anything to tell rookie cops, what would I tell them? And my thing is I said, always be honest. Don't lie. If you get hemmed up, you got yourself hemmed up, don't lie about it, because the truth's eventually going to come out. You always tell the truth, because that's the integrity is one of the few things that somebody can't take away from you. Your word and your integrity. So you keep that. And I've been like that in my career. Now, some old bosses I've had, they tell you, it's like, hey, I've done some stupid shit, but I didn't never lie to them. I got called in, they're like, did you do this or say that? Yeah, I said it exactly like that. I never lied about it. I've taken my licks through the years, trust me, but I've been known that if you come and ask me something, I tell you, you can bet I'm not lying to you on it. And that's actually helped me follow me through my career, because like now if a boss calls me, stuff like that, and they ask me, they don't question me. I'm like, no, this happened, because they know I'm not gonna lie to them. I was cutting grass and we have take home car, threw a rock one time and smashed out the window of my unit, and called the boss, and I called my boss. Well, the sheriff himself called me later, and thanked me. I'm like, what, for damaging you? And he's like, no, I want to thank you because you didn't lie about it. You didn't try to say, oh, I was at Walmart or this or that. And he's like, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I did it. It was an accident. If I have to pay for it, I will. I mean, but he's like, oh, no, we're going to take care of it, this and that. But I just wanted to let you know I appreciate it, because you didn't try to make up a story about it. Tell the truth. You might get suspended. You might get demoted or whatever, but you still have your integrity with you. So no, I know how you talking about with them lawyers. I'm sure there's a lot of them. Well, we're not paying you for that. You're supposed to be on our side. We're paying you to testify, towards our client, but your client's wrong. So no, I don't blame you at all for that. That's nothing but integrity. Got respect for that.
Yeah, that's all we have, right? Our reputation, our integrity, and if you lose that, you lose everything. So this is. And, I tell people in the past, just tell the truth. It makes testifying that when you testify, I don't know. It seems like I testified at an inordinate amount of trials. I don't know why, but also, grand juries and so forth. But just telling the truth, you know what? It makes it simple. I was never. Everybody gets nervous up there, but I was never like, you know what I mean? It was never like a big thing to me. It was just like, okay, I'll tell the truth. And I had some serious cases when I was in the sex crime squad, special victim squad. And, I had a case where I put a guy away for, I don't know, they had like 5 consecutive terms of 275 years to life. And in New York, what that means is in 40 years, you can get parole. Like, I don't know how that works, but yeah. So anyway, when I was going through that trial, it was something, I don't even know what it was. I know it was minor, but it was something I didn't do, and I probably should have done during the case. And the defense attorney asked me, I said, yeah, I should have done it. I didn't do it. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't vital, but still, you got to admit, hey, I didn't do it. You're not going to lie. And the jury sees that. And I had this defense attorney, he was a private, well-known defense attorney there. And I never really hated all these guys. I just thought they're doing their job, whatever. But he came up to me afterwards and shook my hand. He said, did a really good job and blah, blah, blah. And I took it as a compliment. I said, okay, But, I was doing my job. And, and again, you represent, maybe not narcotics, but in special victims, sex crimes, you're representing a victim, or if you're doing a homicide case, which would rarely come my way, once in a while a sexual homicide, but you're representing a person, whether they're a victim, whether they're living or not. You represent them. Taxpayers, they're paying your money, your salary to go up to represent them. So go ahead and do it, and do the right thing. And if you make a mistake, admit it. That's all.
Oh yeah, I had this defense attorney. He's retired now, but he'd tell you. I had respect for I actually liked the guy because he before court he'd be like, hey, I got you on this one, right? You screwed this up or that up. He's like, and I'm like, Wayne, it's great. It's fine, because if he got you, if he find out you messed up, and he's going to come at you and do his job because that's what he's getting paid to do. But he came up to me one time. He's like, hey, I was like, I said, I got you this time. Nope. I said, he's like, all right, well, but it was like that. Nicest guy. I actually seen this attorney. He was a very high paid defense attorney. He would defend people on death penalty cases and stuff. He was that kind of, and he actually he got this guy. He did his job, and he ended up winning this case, and this guy got acquitted. And after the guy got acquitted, he looked at him, and basically it's like, yeah, well, we got away with that one, huh? Admitted that he had murdered this person after he was acquitted. You got double jeopardy. So this man, for the longest time, it broke him. It took him a long time to get back because he felt, even though he did his job and did it well, and that guy did that. It ate at him for a long time too. So some people like, now they do have some defense attorneys out there that are just scumbags, but most of them, they're just doing their job. That's how they make their living.
Yeah, I would say most. Not everybody. Like everything else, every profession has its bad apples and bad, actors. But I think we're all trying to do our job, and we need to really look to our code, our moral code, I guess, like you said, the integrity part of it, and just stick with that real close.
Yep. Well, John, I appreciate you coming and sitting and talk to us. I have really enjoyed it. Like I said, people that worked in big cities and stuff, very intriguing to me. Like I said, I've seen, the only thing I have experience with that is what I've seen on TV, and I know that's not real. So on the show, I did enjoy NYPD Blue, though. That was a good show.
Yeah.
But
it is.
Don't hang up yet. I'm going to do the little outro real quick, and just don't hang up.
Okay.
All right, everybody. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I know I enjoy it. People coming on and telling some stories for us and stuff out of their time. Remember to watch your back, watch your partner's back, and we're not sheepdogs. That we're lions. Y'all be safe, and till next episode.